all vinyl related, but there have been things throughout my life musically that I have really regretted not doing or missing out on, and I'm going to talk about what happened and we can all laugh at my misfortune together. If you haven't already, it'd be awesome if you'd like this video, hit the red subscribe button, and turn your bell notifications on so you don't miss out on any weekly videos I put out. First two involve music festivals, so let's go all the way back to LollapaLOSER in 2010. This was my first music festival. My friends drove all the way from New York to Chicago. We were super excited to see the acts. And I remember on the second or third night, I forget which one, it was a back-to-back double header of The National, who was my favorite band at the time and still is, followed by Arcade Fire directly across the park from them on the other bigger stage. So I was very close for The National, and I remember having this excitement after the show of running with everyone across the field, getting to Arcade Fire, who I believe it was just before or just after the Suburbs came out, because they were playing Suburbs songs. And Arcade Fire was one of my favorite bands at the time. I was so excited to see them, and they put on a really, really awesome show. It sounds like that shouldn't be a regret, right? Well, years later, I got heavily into grunge, as you guys know. And I went back to that lineup and I was like, who was playing the same night? Because the headliners were on different sides of the park. Each night there were two. And I looked at the lineup and I had completely forgotten that Soundgarden was headlining that night. Now, was I a big Soundgarden fan at the time? Not really. I knew the singles and a couple other tracks, but I wasn't as into grunge as I was 5 or 6 years later. Chris Cornell passed away, and I got to see him perform once. It was at the Temple of the Dog show in Los Angeles, and it was an absolutely magical evening. But I heard that Soundgarden show was unbelievable, and I had the opportunity to go see it. It's been flipped now, because Arcade Fire is a band I barely listen to anymore. I've grown out of them, I'm not as big of a fan, and Soundgarden I could not be a bigger fan. Will I have a chance to see Arcade Fire? I'm sure plenty more. I'll never get a chance to see Soundgarden. So that's a huge regret, and I can understand why I made that call at the time, but looking back, I'm just like, Matt, what'd you do? The second one is another music festival. This might have been my second festival. It was a couple years later at Governor's Ball in New York City, 2014. So another awesome festival. I've always had a good time there, even though almost every year it rains substantially during the weekend, causing everything to be muddy. It actually rained out one of the nights once. It was, I think, 2 years after that when Kanye was headlining. It completely rained his day out and we couldn't go, which was awful. I actually flew out from LA to see Kanye, so that was the biggest slap in the face, but that's not what this is about. This is about a terrible decision that I made to see a band over another band again. So with festivals, the frustrating thing is you have these conflicts. So there's X amount of people that can play each day, but there are Y amount of time slots, and the time slots are less than the amount of people. So they overlap, sometimes completely, sometimes partially, but if you want to get a good spot, you usually have to get to a festival and wait for a little while to make sure you get a good spot at the stage, or leave a set early, which is suboptimal. I was stuck with a tough decision. I don't know what possessed me. This is one that I look back on and I think to myself, I don't know why I made this call, and I regret it so much. But the Strokes were playing at the same time as Childish Gambino. Now, Childish Gambino at the time was touring and playing stuff from Because the Internet, which is one of my top 25 albums of all time. It is an album that to this day is incredibly important to me. And in my head, I had this logic where I was like, Gambino's on the rise. He's going to be performing all the time. His music's only going to get better and better, and I'll be able to see him anytime. But the Strokes, who knows if they're going to play much, because I think they hadn't played a lot of shows in the past few years prior. I picked the Strokes, and the Strokes was a good show. There were maybe 5 or 6 songs I really got amped for, my favorites. You Only Live Once, you know, things of that nature. And I had a good time, but my Gambino predictions did not pan out as expected. He did keep making music, but it wasn't the hip-hop style that I came to know and love him for. It was obviously that more soulful, experimental style that he had over the following 2 records, and he never toured BTI material again, except for the singles occasionally at some of his shows. I also, to add insult to injury, never got a chance to see him at all before he decided to retire the moniker of Childish Gambino. So not only did I miss seeing him completely at a place where I could have just walked over and saw him, I didn't get to see him perform my favorite album of his, one of my favorite of all time, and I can't even bring myself to look at the videos from the concert because I feel like it'll just bring me so much stress knowing that I made that horrible, horrible decision. And number 3 is another show. This is not one that is a festival that I made a mistake at. This was a show that I didn't go see, and I have major regrets for not buying the ticket. So back in October 2015, The National, my favorite band, was doing a benefit show. It was actually 2 back-to-back shows in one day. It was called the 1,000 Girls Initiative, and it was to benefit education for girls in Guatemala. They were playing this show at the Troubadour in West Hollywood. The Troubadour is a top 3 venue in the world for me. I love the energy there. The amount of bands that had insane early career shows there, like Guns N' Roses, and the amount of bands that do secret shows there before preparing for a massive tour, the history is just unparalleled. It's a small, intimate, amazing sounding venue. When you're in there, no matter where you are, you're practically on the stage. And my favorite band was playing there. The tickets were $150 a piece, and I had just been laid off from a job 2 weeks prior to hearing about it. I did not have a new job lined up, so in that moment, rather than justifying the cost by, I don't know, selling a couple records, putting on a credit card, doing anything that would have given me that life memory, I passed on getting tickets for the show. Well, I don't know how the show was. I have a friend who went who said it was great. My favorite band was playing at one of my favorite venues in an intimate, small setting, and I could have seen them there. They only play gigantic settings now. I really regret not going to that show, either of the 2 sets. It would have been for a great cause too. It was just really bad timing, and I guess I was stressed about what I was going to do job-wise, so I made a safe decision, but I always wonder how amazing that show would have been. Number 4 is not keeping my ticket stubs. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know, many people like to keep their ticket stubs from concerts they've been to, and if you've seen it, they have these kind of boards made up that are cork boards or something that they put all their ticket stubs laid out like a mosaic that they can look at and be like, oh man, these are all the shows I've been to, remember this one, remember this one. It's a cool trip down memory lane, and for a music fanatic like me who's been to so many shows, that would have been an amazing thing to hang up in my home just so I can go back and be like, oh right, that show and this show. And I realized like 4 or 5 years ago that I should have been doing this since I was 15. I think my first show when I was 15, I think it was Howie Day. He was playing at like a church in New Jersey in my hometown. And it was pretty good. I actually thought he was pretty good live. He used some cool looping techniques. But ever since then, there have been hundreds of shows that I've gone to, and I had so many ticket stubs that either through moves or various, oh, I lost it moments, I did not keep them. And if I could just go back in time and find all of those ticket stubs and put them together and make a beautiful collage, I think that would have been so awesome to, you know, show people that are guests, show friends, show you guys, talk about in a video. But unfortunately, there's no way for me to go back and accurately catalog every show I've ever been to. And I guarantee you, there's got to be at least 1 or 2 shows that I thought were amazing that I completely forget going to because it's been a long life. And I don't know exactly every time I went to a show because there's been so many great ones. But that would have been a really nice touch. And finally, I'm not going to harp on this one because if you're longtime fans of the channel, you know I talk about this all the damn time. I didn't buy Frank Ocean's Blonde on Black Friday 2016. I had it in my cart. I saw it was $50 shipped, and I was like, that's really expensive. I wasn't as in love with the album then as I am now. It grew on me harder than any album has ever grown on me in my life. In terms of my first listen to like my 6th, night and day difference. I cannot believe I passed on it. I subsequently can't believe I passed on buying it for $200 a couple months later. I can't believe I passed on buying it for $500 a couple years later. These prices for Blonde continue to climb. Frank is showing no sign of repressing it, and last I looked, copies on eBay are asking over $1,000. Copies on Discogs are selling for high $700-800, and if it doesn't get a repress, these are only going to increase. So I have a bootleg. It sounds good. If I want to listen to it, it'll sound fine, but I don't have the official pressing, and that is a huge hole in my collection that I was hoping to fill this year. And in my video where I talk about my top grails of this year, that was one of my goals. I've hit almost all my goals. That is one that I think will elude me because the prices have jumped up over $300 since I made that video early this year. So, big musical regret. That was the only vinyl related one, but man, it's a big one. So what I want you guys to do is leave a comment below with your biggest musical regrets, whether it's a concert you didn't go to, whether it's an album that you sold, an album you didn't buy, whatever it may be, I want to hear it. Let's all grieve together over some musical mistakes in our past. Thank you guys for watching this video. There's more coming soon. Take it easy.